where Vegas has loved the Aggies all season. And they certainly love the Aggies now. So this spread, Missouri's going to Texas A&M. Texas A&M opened as a 1.5 point favorite. That moved to 2.5 on Sunday night, back to 1.5 on Monday morning. But at this point, I'm not surprised that A&M's favored because Vegas has felt this way about A&M all year. They favored them against Notre Dame, favored them going to Florida, which obviously, I don't think Vegas knew what Florida was at that point. But how do we feel about this? Because Texas A&M gutted out a win against Arkansas. And I thought it was a good win. I thought it was a very good win against Arkansas. The last time we saw Missouri, they were getting pushed to overtime by Vanderbilt, but they have had a week off to kind of figure some things out.
Yeah. Missouri was supposed to be a team that was competitive in the SEC this year, right? Like a team that you
Correct.
thought maybe in theory could have even pushed some people with their schedule to potentially make it to Atlanta, right? Like I'm not overstating that, right?
No,
and then you watch the games on Saturday night, especially the Alabama-Georgia game, and then you compare it to what you've seen from Mizzou this year, and it looks like those two teams are playing a different sport. I think you can say that a lot about, games that you watch. Like, for instance, I saw, Notre Dame beat writers posting that same sentiment. Like when you start talking about the top tier of college football and then you start comparing it to the second tier, a lot of times you feel that way. But like, I don't know if I'm there with Mizzou yet. They've gotten some easy wins, but they struggled a little bit against Boston College when we were together. They almost lost to Vanderbilt in overtime. Like going into Texas A&M, a team that feels really good about itself right now and might have found some things. Like, I don't know that this is a particularly advantageous spot for Mizzou at this point. Like, I think getting out of there with a win would be a massive win for them. And I don't know if I feel confident they're going to be able to do it. I know they've got Luther Burden. I know Brady Cook. I know their offense is pretty good. And I think that they should be able to stop Texas A&M to a certain extent. But like, I don't know if I look at this and go, wow, Mizzou, a team that we had in the top 10, even if Texas A&M is this 8-4 team that everybody makes fun of them for, like going into Kyle Field playing an 8-4 team isn't a layup win for Mizzou right now until they prove it.
The other thing is Texas A&M need to beat Mizzou to be 8-4. If you look at Texas A&M's schedule. So if Texas A&M's an 8-4 team, they might have to win this game to get there. So let's not forget that part of it. And Producer River, throw Mizzou's schedule back up on the screen because I want people to look at this. Mizzou has to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
Because Auburn, at Alabama, Oklahoma, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, Arkansas. Like, at Mississippi State, I'm not that worried about. Everything else I would worry about. Every single other one of those games is losable for Missouri. So it's not going to be easy. And I think that's the part that we're now understanding. I think Ole Miss, Kentucky helped us understand that. It's not easy. There's no easy.
But I think that
to be good.
What you just said there is revelatory because that is by far the easiest SEC schedule. So if you're already, and if we're in week 5 or 6, we're going into week 6. God, we're going into week 6. And you think that Mizzou is going to struggle with a lot of the teams on their schedule. Like we looked at that schedule before the year and thought Mizzou was unquestionably better than all the teams on their schedule, except Alabama and maybe Oklahoma. And like the context of those games has changed dramatically in terms of, they could lose to Alabama and still make the SEC championship. And it's like, now are we like in the place where we are with Mizzou, where it's like, can they beat South Carolina? Like, is that where we are with this team?
That's where we are. Well, because we're gonna get to Ole Miss, South Carolina in a few minutes, or maybe next. And are you sure Ole Miss can beat South Carolina?
Well, Ole Miss has had a pretty horrific loss, and I don't think that Mizzou has done that yet. So, like, I don't know if
they went to overtime with Vanderbilt.
They did.
And this is where we're at.
So you think Mizzou and Ole Miss are in the same bucket of questionable right now?
Yes, because they were in the same bucket the whole time, or at least we thought they were.
I know, but I think that they veered this weekend a little bit. One was off, and I mean, winning a clunker is not the same thing as losing to Kentucky, right? Like, we're not going to sit here and crown like Kentucky is the top 3 team in the SEC all of a sudden. Like, they lost to Kentucky Saturday.
If a kick goes a different direction, they lose to Vanderbilt. Losing to Vanderbilt is worse than losing to Kentucky.
But that extended the game. That wasn't a game-winning kick. Weren't they losing when they?
Well, there were other plays in the game. It ended tied. There were other opportunities for Vandy to score points in regulation. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm as down on Mizzou as I am on Ole Miss. Although I think that Ole Miss is probably better than Mizzou with the pieces
I find that interesting. A 3-point home loss to Kentucky and being tied with Vanderbilt at home at the end of regulation. I look at those as basically the same thing.
Well, the thing I think is the reason why I feel differently is because I thought coming into the year that Ole Miss was much better than Mizzou. So the fall from grace, I think, was further for me than it would be for Mizzou. So I think a lot of the Mizzou could win the SEC or make the playoff discussion from me, Andy, was more predicated on the lack of challenges on its schedule. Like, if you want to talk about a time to go in on, NIL and taking your shot at the window, like, this is every bit of a window for Mizzou as it was for Ole Miss. So, like, Ole Miss just went out and got more players. But, like, Ole Miss, to me, I thought it had a legitimate chance of potentially even winning the national title this year. Like, that's where I was with Ole Miss. I don't think I was ever there with Mizzou.
Well, the good news for Mizzou, they're still undefeated. And if the Vandy game was the anomaly, as one of our folks in the chat suggested, then this will be fine. So I'm going to pick Mizzou here. If you're going to give me points, I'm going to take Mizzou because I do think both these teams can run the ball. Nate Noel has been fantastic for Mizzou so far. He's averaging 6.4 yards a carry. Mm-hmm. We know with Marcel Harris starting at quarterback at Texas A&M, they're going to be very heavy on the ground. But Luther Burden is the one thing that Texas A&M does not have and may not have an answer for. So I'm going to go with Mizzou here.
Yeah, and I think Mizzou might be able to drag them into the type of game that they were in with Notre Dame, right? And like Texas A&M has a long way to go, I think, before they can start to claim or be favored in situations where they win those tough, gutted out games in the fourth quarter. Like they've done a pretty good job in the time since they lost to Notre Dame. But do you feel like A&M is like above doing what A&M has typically done the last few years, which is play good, close games and then not close it? Like, I'm going to take Mizzou here too. I think Mizzou is a team that's explosive enough to put some points on the board. I think that they're going to give up some rushing yards. I think that A&M's a really tough physical team. And I think it's going to be a game in the third and fourth quarter, but I don't know that I trust Texas A&M to win those games yet.
No. Now, it's a different administration. This is not a Jimbo team. But, yeah, I'm taking Missouri here. Texas A&M needs to prove otherwise. If Texas A&M gets dragged into that kind of game and wins it, we can have the discussion about how different is Texas A&M under Mike Elko. I think that's
in fairness, it is important that I point out that like A&M did just win a game like that against Arkansas this weekend, right?
True.
Like they did play a close game against a team that I think is underrated. I think you agree with me with Arkansas. Like people view them as they stink. I don't think they stink. So A&M has done that. So like if A&M is in a position to beat Mizzou this weekend, I think that would be a huge lift to their program. I think Mike Elko could be the mayor of Texas if he does, or a mayor of College Station if he does that.
I was going to say, Steve Sarkisian probably has a good chance at bigger office in Texas right now.
But when you think about it, though, Andy, like the things that have ailed A&M for as long as they've ailed them, like it kind of felt very Jimbo-y the way they lost to Notre Dame, right? Like, so for them to get off onto a better tangent, you know what? It hit me. I'm changing my pick. I'm going A&M. Yeah, I'm going A&M. There you go. Like, it is a different administration. A&M is at home. They play a tough physical brand of football, and they have a head coach who has won a close game against a tough SEC opponent. Why not A&M?
I understand your reasoning. I'm going to go with Missouri for the reasons I said. I think these teams are actually pretty similar in terms of how well they play on the ground. I just think Luther Burden is the part that A&M had, like I said, does not have an answer for. So we'll see. But I think this is going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch it. I'm very excited for that one. Would you like to go to the Missouri-Texas A&M game? You can get tickets. Yeah, it's sold out, but Game Time has tickets for everything. So you want to go to Missouri A&M? Do you want to go to Auburn, Georgia? Do you want to go to Iowa, Ohio State? Game Time has the tickets. Maybe you want to go sailgating in Washington and watch the Michigan-Washington game. Go to Game Time, download the app, redeem the code STAPLES to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. But they have tickets to everything. Use the GT Picks feature, and it shows you the best seats, best prices relative to the market. You know you won't be wading through a bunch of stuff. You won't have to worry about whether you're getting the best deal. You are getting the best deal with Game Time. Redeem that code STAPLES, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.